Welcome to the Star Chamber. I'm Ryan Swayze, a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and the founder and president of the Walk the Talk Foundation, a nonprofit that advocates for and advises currently serving and former military service members going through the arduous journey of administrative processes and investigations in our government.
And I am Francescagraham, a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Advisor for the Walk the Talk Foundation. For all our returning guests, welcome back. And for our new listeners, thank you for tuning in. Before we begin this week's topic, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, check out our Walk the Talk Foundation website, and hit that donate button if you think we're doing a good job. Also, check out our newsletter, the DoD Times Redacted, on all the socials, including LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Links in the description. All right, Star Chamber listeners, let's get started.
Okay, welcome back to another mini episode of our Star Chamber podcast. Ryan Swayze here again with you, the president and founder of the Walk the Talk Foundation. And today I'd like to talk about reprisal complaints. All risk, no reward. And I'm especially referring to those who file reprisal complaints in the military and Coast Guard. Our COO and I recently returned back from speaking at a fairly high-level Inspector General engagement where we spoke with quite a few people, quite a few officials from the IG realm. And one in particular really struck me, and that was the discussion led by a representative from the DoD IG in terms of whistleblower reprisal and protections, etc. And the discussion reminded me of when Francesca went to brief the now deposed Department of Defense Inspector General, Mr. Storch, and his team. And one of the leads for the whistleblower reprisal investigation branch touted the thousands, quote unquote, of people in the military who enjoy whistleblower protections. Now, that statement in and of itself was ridiculous because, of course, as we've talked to many times, the substantiation rate of those complaints is about 2.4%. That's not including those dismissed outright, so it's more like 2%. So in order to achieve the self-touted thousands of people, just sheer math would mean there'd have to be millions of reprisal complaints, because of those complaints, only 2% are substantiated, i.e. only 2% enjoy whistleblower protection. So to get to that thousands number, it would have to be an astronomical sum of reprisal complaints, which of course is not based in any fact. But beyond that ridiculous platitude, one of the statistics briefed was the number of billions of dollars that whistleblowers in the federal government recoup each year. And note, I said federal government, not the military, because military whistleblowers don't or aren't credited for recouping millions of dollars or billions of dollars, whatever the case may be. That sum of money quoted was surely those in the SEC sectors who blow the whistle and then sanctions are subsequently levied and the government recoups money. And that leads me to the discussion of the Dodd-Frank Act and how it applies or should apply to military whistleblowers and doesn't. You see, in the Dodd-Frank Act, it is written into law if there are sanctions levied on a company, then the whistleblower is automatically afforded 10 to 30% of those sanctions should they exceed $1 million. This is a great model for the military, maybe not monetarily, but insofar as the SEC realm, the whistleblower is afforded incentive, and maybe not so far as incentive, but at least risk mitigation for blowing the whistle. When they make their cost-benefit decision as to whether they're going to raise their hand, the potential recoupment of money is a metric in that decision matrix. In essence, there is a potential reward an extrinsic one beyond intrinsic for a whistleblower in this sector to raise their hand and report a wrongdoing. Now let's contrast that with the military. What is the incentive for a military member to blow the whistle? What is their risk mitigation? What do they stand to gain versus what do they stand to lose? Well, we'll start with the latter, which is obvious. They stand to lose everything. And we see it in our day-to-day work with the foundation. They lose their clearance, they lose their reputation, they lose their friends, they lose their career, they lose potentially their future career. They stand to lose professionally, emotionally, and psychologically quite a bit. But what do they stand to gain? Why do they do it? Well, first they raise a complaint of wrong because they're lied to, quite frankly, and told that it's their duty and they'll be by law protected. They're clearly not protected, at least 98% of the time, despite the overinflated numbers of thousands, quote unquote, enjoying protections of the program. So what do they stand to gain? And this is really a question for introspection, because if we play it out, if we find those unicorns out there, those members of the 2% club that have actually had substantiated complaints, what do they get from that? Well, it's one of two answers. First of all, most complaints come back months, typically years later. So how can a person be made whole? How can a person be made right if 2 years after the fact, 3 years after the fact even, of a reprisal, the IG system comes back and goes, you know what? Way back when, you were wronged. Well, it's too late for them. The damage to their career and to their person is many times irrevocable. Justice delayed is justice denied, and that quote is no more germane than here. You can't return a person back to a divergent career path that was set in motion years back by a reprisal. And because a service member can't sue, thanks to Ferries and Westfall, the chance for restitution, even given a substantiated reprisal complaint, is next to nil. Of course, there's the other facet, which is accountability for the perpetrator. But again, time is a huge factor in this. Imagine the substantiated complaint coming back and you are the commander or supervisor of a person who carried out a reprisal X years ago. You may not have even known them. You may not know them now. What do? Hey, don't do that again. Hey, that was wrong. Where's the accountability in that? Again, it's unlikely to happen. So that returns us to the question, if, given the glacial process, which is a DODIG reprisal investigation, comes to a positive quote-unquote end with a substantiation, what reward does it provide the member? There's no real restitution. There's no real accountability. So what the hell's the point? At the end of the day, the service member is basically left with one thing, just the solace in knowing that justice was carried out. But in that time frame, they suffered immeasurable, sometimes, emotional, psychological, professional, and personal damage. Not to mention the stress put on the people they love and or their family members. That really leads us to the conclusion that the only time there's going to be a quote-unquote happy ending for the complainant here is if it's an investigation that's carried out in a timely manner and done correctly. And those just don't happen, quite frankly, because timely in this context means if and when substantiated, the findings would carry weight, the chain of command would be beholden to those findings, and the restitution and recourse would be served immediately. And this brings us to another facet we'll talk to later, is that you can have the best investigative system in the world, but if no one, in this instance, the chain of command and or a board of correction of military records, if neither of those are beholden to an inspector general findings, it's totally toothless. So again, and I hate to repeat myself, what the hell's the point? A member of the military or Coast Guard has a 0.001% chance of success when they start down the path of a reprisal complaint, and a 99.9% chance of something retaliatory or in the nature of reprisal or isolation or gaslighting or defamation or all of the above happening to them. So how can we fix this? How can we mitigate this? And the answer may lie in the Dodd-Frank model. And maybe we can't offer monetary compensation or risk insulation, but there has to exist something by which we can provide the service member some sort of assurance, some sort of insurance that when they raise their hand, they're not just going to be falling on their sword for nothing. Because in the current state and under the current construct, that's exactly what they're doing. They are reporting a wrongdoing based on principles alone, which is the personification of moral courage. It's exactly the ethos we want to see exemplified from our service members. And is that rewarded? No. In fact, quite the antithesis. It's punished, which is frankly mind-boggling to me. And all this harkens back to a theme we've discussed throughout many shows in the podcast, which is the military must reward what it values. If it says it values moral courage, if it says it values people who have the fortitude to raise their hand and say this is wrong, then it needs to reward them, period. Right now, it speaks quite literally out of both sides of its mouth. It says, we honor those who exemplify courage. We will protect those who speak out against evil and wrong. And then it does the opposite. So what do you really expect a service member to do? I guess if there's a silver lining here, it's a testament to the individual service member who consistently still, knowing the risks, despite knowing what's probably going to happen to them, which is an untimely end to their career, they still continue to do the right thing, which is again a testament to the quality of person we have serving in our military. But ironically, and quite hypocritically, they're punished for that. And that needs to change. Thanks for joining me on this mini episode. I'm Ryan Swayze, and until next episode, bye.
Well, that's it for this week's topic. We really appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and check out our foundation website at walkthetalkfoundation.org.
And feel free to reach out and give us feedback. You can get a hold of us via Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and our foundation's website. Details in the description section. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next episode.